I don't know why tonight, but for some reason the LED lights are lighting up my kitchen table reasonably well. This never happens. Anyway, I want to talk to you about a particular thing I'm sort of concerned about. There's a certain person I watch and, I've always been a great supporter and encourager of what he does, and I always wish him the best of luck and all that. But I've become a little bit concerned on occasion, and I'm sort of concerned once again. And I want to sort of tell you about something that I've seen my Chinese boss doing, and I'm a little bit concerned that Troy might be going down the same track with regards to his current project. Anyway, about my boss. For those of you who don't watch the updates, you might know this, but basically there's a whole bunch of posts in the vineyard, and there's wires obviously attached to those posts, and the grapevines are trained on those posts. These are treated pine in most cases. Some of them are not that treated or not treated at all, but almost all of them are treated pine, and they're big, they're thick. Some of them are only as thick as my arm, others are as thick as my leg. Some are thicker than my leg. Depends what part of my leg you're measuring. Basically, when the machine harvester comes along, it has what looks like, and some of you might have seen this as well, it almost looks like handrails that slam in from each side. And the idea is that these shake the absolute hell out of the vines and all the grapes fall off. Usually with a few leaves and a few caterpillars as well, and maybe the odd bunch of snails. But basically, the stems are left behind and the grapes come off, fall down below onto the nylon plates, and they're on an angle, and it feeds through a series of different conveyors and bucket elevators and eventually into the back of a tractor. Now, with these arms, the only reason any of these posts that are as thick as my leg, if not thicker, have snapped off is because of these arms slamming against these posts. And if you stay over these posts for 15 or 20 seconds with this machine, it'll break the damn posts at ground level, sometimes a few inches underground. Now, we've been putting in these Chinese posts, and the steel quality I'm seeing is that bad. I've only ever heard of steel quality this bad until I've dealt with these posts. What looks like stone cracks in the post itself. It's just flaming bizarre and pretty freaky. There's bits that sort of flake off as we start driving them into the ground and whatnot. And quite simply, with posts that are normally used for cattle and sheep fencing, the good Australian-made ones, you can give them a bit of a pull and bend them straight if you don't quite whack them in line. And we've had a few of these posts that haven't quite gone in line because of grapevine roots or rocks or the being too close to the old pine post or whatever. And my boss is sort of the manager as such, not the Chinese guy, but the manager has said to me at one point there with one of them, "Oh, it's not quite straight. Can you just sort of give it," and I was on the ground, "can you give it a, push that way and bend it straight?" So I gave it a push and a little bit more, give it a bit more of a harder push, and then she just went snap. And I mean, it just snapped like it was made out of cast iron. It just snapped clean off and, had that sort of frosted-ish cast iron look on the edge there. And how are those posts going to handle the machine? They're not. Every single one of these damn steel posts is going to crack off and break, even if we don't stay over it very long with a harvester at all. You know, even if we continue driving with a harvester as we go over that post, it is still going to make them snap just by the pure vibration. If it's good enough to snap wood that is that thick, I wouldn't have a hope of snapping it, and yet I can snap the steel post quite easily. That pretty much answers the question there. But anyway, this Chinese boss will learn the hard way by the looks, you know, and learn a lesson that basically comes down to this. There are times when you can cheap out so much on something that at the end of the day, you end up back at square one because the whole lot fails, the whole lot collapses, and all these posts will all snap off. I can see it happening. And basically, he will be back to square one. So he spent this money and he ends up back at square one. There's a story I was told by a relative of mine who has been to Scotland, and there was a bridge there. Now, they could have got this bridge made out of Sheffield steel from England, which is arguably probably the best steel maker in the world. And, you know, the quality of their steel is absolutely unbelievable. And they could have got steel made by them and had it put up. But some turkey done calculations and realised that you get the steel done in China and bought over and all that, and at the end of the day, they would save 15% of their money. You know what happened? The whole lot collapsed and fell in the river, and they had to take it all out of the river, and that 15% they saved, they end up spending on the scrapping mob who basically had to get cranes over the river and divers and get it out of the river and then scrap all the rest of it. And they were back to just the bare concrete foundations. They spent the same amount of money as it would have cost to build the good one, and they were just back to square one. I know Troy's trying to save a buck and he's trying to work out new and cheaper ways of doing things, but I'm a little bit fearful of this pallet wood stuff. It all sounds pretty glorious, but my experience of pellets, I'll tell you right now, it is some of the lowest quality wood there is, because they've basically got no other use for wood, and because it's usually a one-use only wood, they can get away with it. Some of it is fine wood, and then you find out it's got an exceedingly large amount of sap that keeps seeping out of it all the time, you know, especially during the hotter times of the year. And, you know, to get the thicknesses right, they're all going to be different thickness. And I understand he's got a thickness planer. Well, actually two now. But at the end of the day, is this all, like, first of all, you save money on a bit of wood, but my gosh, it's going to be a mishmash of flaming different sorts of wood, and, you know, you've got to get them all the right thickness, and then they're going to be all short lengths, and you've got to make sure that it all, you know, is sealed between each length of this stuff and whatnot. And, you know, at the end of the day, is all this going to get done before the first snowfall? He may save a few dollars, but the labour effort is going to be astronomical. And I sort of fear with that many joins that there may be a few leaks and a few whatnots along those lines. The more smaller pieces you have and the more holes you have in those smaller pieces, the more chances there are for leaks. You know, and he's got enough problems with humidity on the floor and stuff like that as it is, without, you know, sort of possibly further complicating things. You know, and I just hope it doesn't go this way, but it'd be terrible to see the whole lot of this sort of all go sideways, all in an attempt to work out how to do it cheap off pellet wood. And if you wanted a pellet wood house, you know, maybe it was a good idea to go and get a pellet wood house and make it, you know, from day one just as a pellet wood building that had a layer of varnish or, you know, 3 layers of paint. Tens, yes, I know from first-hand experience, 3 layers of paint will waterproof things. Nice and thick, it'll waterproof things. You know, but maybe he would have been better to, you know, build something that was out of pellet wood but was only built to last a year, and build another one the next year and use the same insulation out of the insides, you know, or something like that. The other options I'm really thinking of would be outside being some kind of plastic that doesn't expand, and yes, some does expand, and I have experienced a few things in regards to that myself firsthand. And basically I've got plastic sheeting on one of my bedroom outer walls, and the first summer it warped and it hasn't really unwarped. But at the end of the day, it's overlapped well enough that it has remained entirely waterproof. And after the second year, it actually got larger gaps, and I filled a few of those up with expansion foam. But having said that, you know, it's sort of surviving, not grandly, but, you know, this is the thing. I got a plastic that should not have expanded, but it did. So plastic may be an option if you had the right type of plastic. And if you get the wrong type, it's not that grand, to be honest. The one I was really thinking of, and I know this is a terrible one in the case of heat transfer, but that is aluminium sheet. Really thin stuff, like Coke can stuff. Now, you'd be surprised that it can sort of be reasonably strong. It might tear from the screws that are put through at the right place, but you want button head screws or something like that. But, you know, let's face it, unless a bear's gouging the outside, there's probably not going to be really much that could happen to it. Or a tree collapse, you know, but then, I mean, how good's it? Most 2x4 houses don't survive tree collapse anyway, even proper ones that are built permanently and to building codes. But, you know, just throwing around a few ideas here, I think that would be one of the best options you could have, is to have thin aluminium sheet. I'm talking real thin sheet, because aluminium is the cheapest it's ever been basically since 10 years ago. You know, the prices are more than a decade in the past on aluminium. And, you know, if it's thin aluminium, well, it's going to be even cheaper, isn't it? And I don't think it needs to be terribly thick. And the thinner it is, the less weight there is. And I'll sort of question the amount of weight he's going to have if he then goes and whacks a whole heap of pellet wood on the outside. You know, and the thing is, this is all going to take that long. I don't think it's going to be done in time, you know. I mean, it's his cup of tea, and I wish him best of luck and all that. But, I mean, holy cow, you know, while I'm thinking of it, you could have shingles like they do in the old houses here, wooden shingles. I've got a better idea. DVD cover shingles. I mean, flaming hell, there's nothing to say that won't work. Go one better, cardboard. How come I didn't think of that? By the way, the cardboard house is doing pretty good. The roof's sort of warping a little bit. And the joins between the different bits of cardboard, I've had to silicone a few of those up. There's one or two little bits that have got a little bit soggy. There's obviously been a hole that I didn't quite get covered with the waterproof coating in one or two spots. But that's literally only one or two spots, usually up near the roof. And the sides are going surprisingly well. And, yeah. maybe choice you'd go for cardboard. Because I tell you what, that's lightweight, and if you do that right, that's blooming, waterproof, and generally. And there is another option I've worked out to make it completely waterproof, and everyone will think it's crazy, but it might work the winter until he's got enough money to do it nicely. Realistically, I mean, that's a bit of a dud idea, to be honest. But I do hope he sort of gets it all together and that, but I'm sort of fearing that, the time's ticking by very quickly, and it could all end in flaming tears. So, yeah.